All right. Good morning, everybody. Maybe afternoon, depending on where you're joining from as well. Want to welcome you to the webinar today. We're going to be talking about some opportunities for automating your park's remote meter reading, especially for some short-term stays, maximizing that too. So excited to welcome Jason from MarineSync, and they are one of our partners that we work with on the remote meter reading side, and we've been very happy with what we've seen there too. And then Allison is our content writer in marketing and is the face behind all the blog articles that you read as well. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to her and open up the conversation here. We do want this to be a conversation with you guys too, so I'm going to make sure that our chat is opened up and that you are able to contribute to that as well. I'll be watching that through the webinar. So if you have questions that come up, feel free to drop those right into the chat, and we will make sure that we get those answered. So you should be able to use the chat now, and I will hand it over to Allison.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, so I'm the content writer here at Camp Life. I'm super excited to get to spend some time with you this morning, talking about utility management. Now, we know that's one of those parts of running a park that maybe doesn't sound very glamorous, but it matters. It matters a lot, a good bit. It matters financially speaking, organizationally speaking, and it kind of matters in keeping your staff happy. We had one park operator recently tell us that asking staff to go read meters was like asking her teenager to make his bed. It was like a chore no one really wanted to do. So but what our purpose here this morning is we just want to make sure that you're aware of the tools that are available to you, not only to automate some of these tasks, but also to help you recover some of those utility costs. And to help us do that, we've got Jason Latimer with us. And Jason, we're glad you're here. And I was kind of hoping that you could start us out talking a little bit about MarineSync and your role there.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Allison and Caleb. Yeah, so MarineSync, we're kind of a small kind of family business. We've been around for, oh goodness, was it 15, 16 years? Obviously, as the name implies, we started off servicing marinas. The owners of MarineSync are boat people. They grew up around boats and marinas, so it was an obvious transition for them. But yeah, I would say, maybe 6 years ago, really started to get more involved in the RV space and kind of understanding a lot of the similarities and a lot of the challenges that marinas have. A lot of RV operators have those same challenges with RVs, as opposed to boats or vessels or yachts. So yeah, my role here has been kind of interesting. It feels like drinking from a fire hose as far as learning both industries, the marina industry, the RV industry, how they're similar, how they're different, and just kind of finding a path in there. So yeah, that's been kind of my role.
Yeah, well, so from there, I do want to be clear because I may say remote meter reading, you may say smart metering, we may say utility. We're talking about the same thing here. Those are interchangeable terms. So I do want to be clear about that before we go any further. We don't want to confuse anybody. But maybe you could talk to us about what utility automation, what does it actually look like in practice? And where does MarineSync fit into those day-to-day park operations?
Awesome. Yeah, so it's a great question, but I think, we almost have to take a step backwards in kind of understanding what sub-metering is.
Okay.
And what sub-metering is it's just the idea of putting the financial responsibility for the utility usage on the user. And, it's interesting, sub-metering itself is a very large industry. We kind of deal in one small niche of the sub-metering industry, servicing RV resorts and marinas. But the whole concept is, and it makes total sense when you think about it, but by attaching the financial responsibility to the end user, what ends up happening is users use less of the utility, which so understanding that metering is great for a lot of RV parks because they're what's considered a master metered community, meaning the RV resort operator gets the bill for all of the sites. So by metering or smart metering or remote metering, you're kind of killing two birds with one stone. One is you're lowering the overall utility usage by placing the financial responsibility on the guest or the end user. And two, you're streamlining your operations by not having to manually read meters. So when we talk about remote metering and automation, obviously Camp Life has been a phenomenal partner with us. What we're able to do is opposed to someone on the staff going out there, looking at what the meter reads, writing it down, or taking a picture, all of this is completely automated. It syncs directly into your management software, especially with Camp Life. I mean, my goodness, we've been doing this for years with you guys and the hundreds of parks that we operate. But it's no longer a chore. It's no longer even a task. It's just something that syncs directly into your management software and the whole utility billing portion of it, totally automated. Yeah, it's no longer that chore that people dread.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, you know, I do want to get into the nuts and bolts of what this looks like. But before we do that, you kind of, when we say the word automation, sometimes we imagine something really complicated. But what you're talking about here sounds almost more operational. It's almost that operational mindset. So I wonder if what are some things that parks may not realize about how much time or money even gets tied up in this whole part about managing utilities?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the big thing is just kind of understanding the value of labor.
Mhm.
And I go to some of these events, and if I travel and I stop by an RV resort, I mean, they have great staff. And I think it's about putting your staff in the best position to succeed. And I got to be fair, taking your all-star, rock star staff member who's great with guests, who's great at handling guests, who's great at organizing events, and having them go out and manually read meters and write it down or take a picture, upload it into their management software. It's a little, it's got to be deflating sometimes. And so, as far as that value of labor, take what your staff does great, guest-centric tasks, and just let them focus on that. And let's not again this whole chore, the task of reading meters. Let's let that be a thing of the past. Let's let technology do that for us, so that it frees up your staff to focus on those guest-centric activities.
Yeah. So talk to us about what this technology looks like. Specifically, I know there's one thing I really want you to touch on, Jason, as far as what MarineSync can do when it comes to automating shut off and activation between stays using your smart meters. So could you walk us through how that looks? And I know there are some parks out there really interested in that stop and go model, as people are traveling just and we do have a mutual client, a pretty large client that specializes in that model. And so maybe talk to us about what this looks like in practice.
Perfect. Yeah. So what this looks like in practice is you book your reservation. You're all excited. You get to the park. You check in on your smartphone. And what that does is with the automation that we have with you guys is that turns the power on at the site. Which is important to understand because this is all about attaching the financial responsibility to the user. You could think of it like a gas station. A gas station isn't a free-for-all. You don't just pull up to a gas station, take out the nozzle, put it in your car, and start pumping gas. No, you got to wait until you're financially responsible, till you've inserted your credit card, you've gone to the attendant, and you've paid for the gas. So that's what that automatic turn on and turn off is super important for. Is making sure, no, this utility is only available for the guests at this site when they check in. So check in. It sends a signal, automatically turns on power at the pedestal, and it gets a start read. Guests are there for 3 days, a week, a month, whatever the case may be. they're doing whatever they need to do. Now, when it's time for them, when their stay is over, all they do is check out on the Camp Life app, and that turns the power off. It gets the end read. So now we have the start read, the end read. It calculates the amount of usage, and then it calculates it by the rate multiplier, or basically what the charge is per kilowatt hour in that specific state, city, etc. And it comes up with the bill for them, and it automatically charges their card on file for that usage, and it does it without even thinking about it. And what's so great about Camp Life is, I mean, my goodness, that process that we just described, it would be kind of interesting how many times we've done that together as a team. I mean, I'm thinking it's got to be like hundreds of thousands of those unique, specific events of checking in, checking out, getting the overall total utility usage, doing the calculation. And that's where our partnership has been, just phenomenal. We're kind of the trendsetters, so to speak, with that.
Oh, I like that. What you're saying is we're good at this, Jason. Is that what I'm hearing? No, I'm just kidding.
What I'm saying is, together, we've been doing this for a long time. This isn't anything new. It's not some new scary technology that we just started doing yesterday. Together, we've been doing this. And again, I would be so interested to see if there's a data point on how many times that process has existed, because I got to bet it's close to easily tens of thousands, if not in the hundreds of thousands.
Oh, that would be neat to put a number on that. So we talked about, stop and go, and we may think, oh, well, that's just for small parks. But how could this approach be applied to any campground? And what would that matter as far as, cost go? What would that matter as far as cost?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's important to understand. Obviously, if it's a larger park, they may have a larger cost. If it's a smaller park, they may have a smaller cost associated with it. But it's all about understanding, and this is something that we do really well at MarineSync, is kind of understanding what the goals of the park is. And again, at a larger park, I mean, when you think about their total utility bill, it's got to be just astronomical. So kind of understanding, okay, well, let's try and get this utility bill down. And not only that, let's not only get the bill down, but let's make sure that your guests, that you're recouping that cost. So it's all proportional.
Mhm.
Now, on the small park side, you may think, oh, well, great, I got this huge park. It's going to be, a huge cost. This is only for small parks, but that's not really the case, because the small parks, their room for error is so much less. If you're a smaller park with not that many sites and you've got some heavy hitters coming in using a ton of utility usage, that's going to have a larger impact on your bottom line. So for both small parks and large parks, it could absolutely be beneficial, and just understanding what the goal is of the system and what they want to achieve is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And then not just large park versus small park. I mean, long-term stay versus short-term stay. I think a lot of times we get in that mindset that charging for utility uses is just for, long-term stays. And so we don't always charge for short-term stays. Why do you think that is? And how can we kind of shift that thinking there?
Yeah, and I think this is maybe kind of the largest opportunity that we have, because you're right, there is this thinking that, hey, we only bill for the long-term stays. And I really want to challenge RV resort operators to almost think about it the opposite. So, for example, the reason why you couldn't necessarily do it on short-term stays in the past is, I get it. It would be a logistical nightmare. All of a sudden, it's a busy holiday weekend on Friday. People are checking in, and your staff, it would be impossible for them to go out, get a start read at all these different meters. Then guests are checking out, and you got to get an end read. You got to do that calculation as far as what they use and multiply it by the rate multiplier all at checkout. And my goodness, you would never be able to take care of your guests. So I understand the reason why it was never done on short-term stays. But now when we talk about this automation, and it's not even a task anymore for RV resort operators, it just kind of automatically works in the background. And when we think about submetering, it's like, okay, so let's say you're a park and you have a portion of long-term stays, you have a portion of short-term stays. You're metering for the long-term stays. So what you're doing is you're bringing the utility cost down here, right? You've attached that financial responsibility. They're like, oh my goodness, maybe I don't want to run the ACs while we go out for an afternoon hike in my RV because after all, I'm paying for it. But on the short-term stage, you're doing the opposite. Is you're essentially offering this buffet of utilities for your short-term users, and if you aren't charging them, you're responsible. So you're incentivizing the guests to use a lot of utility to increase their usage or at least not have the mindset of conservation. And then on the back end, you as an RV park operator are financially responsible for that. So it's making sure that the incentives are aligned. And again, because this is such an easy automated process, managing that short term or at least charging or coming up with creative ways for allotting utility usage is going to be important. Um, and there's creative ways to do it. I've seen some RV park operators on their short-term stays, they feel like, I don't really want a nickel and dime. Okay, like I could understand that. So what they do is they allot them a certain amount of usage per day, and then if they don't go over that usage, no problem. You aren't charged. But at least they have more control over the usage and more control over their margins by doing that.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is the technology is in place so that short-term stays can be responsible for their usage. It's going to encourage a little bit more consciousness about what they're using, conservation wise. And we have heard from parks, as soon as I started charging for electricity, my costs went down. We hear those things like that. So we know that there are some practical benefits to parks to be able to charge for both short-term and long-term stays. But here's where, like, maybe the rubber hits the road. Are there simple ways for parks to get started without a complete overhaul of their electrical system?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we do a lot of phase approaches with parks. It may not be something that they incorporate park wide to start off with, but so they'll do it in phases. And I always encourage people, hey, if you can, let's just put our smart meter technology at X amount of sites. And if you can, let's use this for if you're having larger rigs that are going to have a larger power load or a larger demand for power, let's put them at the sites in which we have the smart metering going on over there. Uh, Otherwise, if you put them at a site that's not metered, again, the whole financial responsibility, conservation, all of that good stuff. So let's just get started. And once you see, especially with a great partner like you guys, how easy this process is, then great. Now let's start expanding it as you can with the means that you have available throughout the rest of the park.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get started on just a handful of sites. And we're big proponents of doing test cases or pilot programs, and we'll work with clients just to get the technology out there, just so they could see it in action. I mean, seeing is believing a lot of times, so we could talk about it, and we could preach. I could get on the rooftops and scream this all day long, but to see it in practical terms and is important too.
Yeah. Jason, I was at a conference back in the fall and I was at a breakout session, and the topic wasn't smart meters or remote meter reading, but the conversation quickly went there and stayed there. And one of the main concerns from one of the park owners there is he didn't want um, like remote meter reading, charging for electricity, things like that to come across as overkill. So how do you help people? How do you help parks evaluate whether this investment will actually pay off for them and their customers really can be okay with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it kind of comes back to understanding first and foremost, okay, what is the goal that you would be looking to achieve? And I got to be fair. We have some clients and their goals like are not always the same. And sure, we might be able to lead them down a certain path. We've got there's a small group in Texas that has about three different RV parks, and I just started calling clients one day, kind of wanted to pick their brains, kind of get some case studies. I'm like, hey, so, why did you end up going with our technology? And, I'm talking to him over the phone, so I couldn't see his facial expression, but I'm sure he probably had this dumbfounded look, like, what, do you expect me to go out there in the 100-degree heat and in the rain and the sleet and the hail and the mud and do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Okay, right? But no, but you're right. For other parks, they obviously want to see the ROI and how it impacts their bottom line. So that's where, okay, let's understand what your utility bill looks like. How is your park broken down between long-term gas and short-term gas? Are you even metering long-term gas, right? And then we could look at conservative numbers, like every sub-metering company, and um, nowadays it's funny, like we don't tell people, hey, go Google it, hey, go chat GPT it or whatever. But no, go and do your research, be it Google or chat GPT, and every sub-metering company will tell you on the conservative side, you could expect about a 20 to 25% drop in your utility usage. So, for some park operators, it's just very cut and dry. Yeah, I just don't want to do this, or I don't want my staff to do it. And other park operators, yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty details. Let's assume a conservative number, 15 to 20% drop in your utility usage. What would that look like to your overall monthly bill? And let's plan that out and look at what you would be spending over the course of 2 years versus implementing a system like ours. And then, those numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so for people who are curious about submetering with Marine Sync, what's some advice that you may give park owners who are starting to feel the strain of utility billing, whether it is the practice of reading the meters or it is, just the cost? What's some advice that you might give them as they're trying to weigh out what they should do next? And maybe this is a good place to insert maybe some of the differences you've seen or some things that you've learned from the marine space, because that's where you've started and now you've come over into the RV space as well. So that might be a good time to share some of those tidbits with us too.
Yeah. So I think, especially seeing the marina space, very, very few marinas, especially the larger ones, will include the electric or the utility usage into their sort of slip fee or into their base rate. Very few do that. And I think that's because, especially in the larger marinas, the sophistication of boats or yachts, you don't have as good of an idea of who might be pulling into the harbor or who might be pulling into the marina. And all of a sudden, and not every vessel is going to be built the same. And you have no way on the marina side of really knowing. I mean, you could probably, like the size, obviously a 20-foot skiff is going to use way less power than a 60-foot yacht. But you just don't know. And so I think what the marina industry did is saying, look, we can't be off guard if a 60-foot yacht pulls in and they've got, and they're using a ton of usage. We can't afford that to take that risk of not knowing what the utility usage or just being caught off guard by a surprise bill or a surprise utility usage at a slip. So that's one thing I think the marina industry is done maybe a little bit better on than the RV side. Sorry, and I started rambling, but what was the first part of your question?
No, but that is a really good point that you brought up. You don't know what's coming. I mean, we can capture that information about rig size and things like that, but we don't know if people are bringing air fryers and blow
Hmm.
up things to put in front of their RVs to decorate. I mean, we can really get power hungry with these things. So I think that's an excellent point that you brought up. But where we can go from there is just talk a little bit about what they can do next. These park owners, operators who are considering submetering. What's a good first place to start?
Yeah, so let's start with, I think obviously we do remote metering, but hey, we're in the sub-metering space. Like if you want to look at a case study, hey, you could buy some very affordable non-smart meters. And yes, you would have to manually read them, but put them on five of your sites. And if you can, just again, try that test case. Seeing is believing. Yeah, you don't take my word for it. Like you don't need to go all out and get the remote metering system up front if you're hesitant of it, but go get some meters, put them at some of your sites and actually go and do the process and kind of see what the pain points of manually metering are because I guarantee it, you'll find out very quickly that hey, while this is great, metering is always going to be better than non-metering. So understand the benefits of the metering and then also understand some of the challenges of manually reading those meters. And boy, is that a 3 or an 8 that I wrote down? Or, I accidentally uploaded this to the wrong site. This guest utility usage should have been here and that should have been there. And now I got someone at my front desk, screaming at me because they owe $50 for the weekend. And it's like, whoa, you know. But yeah, let's start off. We're big proponents of sub-metering. Let's start there. And
Mhm.
then once you kind of understand the benefits of sub-metering, great. Now let's talk about remote metering because even on a small scale, you start doing the rounds of manual metering and writing stuff down or even taking photos, and you kind of understand, wow, I could see how this could be a huge challenge site wide. Okay, great. Now let's talk about the remote metering.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And as we kind of start to wrap up this conversation so that we can be sure to leave room for questions here in the next little bit, I'd like to maybe zoom out just a little bit. I mean, we've talked about this technology, smart metering and billing guests automatically through Camp Life, which is really, super cool technology. But where do you see utility management going in the next few years? What's changing in how parks might handle these types of tasks?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say, man, within 10 years, I would say remote metering systems are going to be almost as widespread as a reservation software. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of RV park operators that would think about not using a reservation software. And it's really kind of the same thing. It's about being efficient and streamlining your operations. No one wants a staff member there managing the phones to take reservations over the phone. Um, but if you look at, sort of kind of what's going on and what's kind of happening around the corner, like just ask, people could ask themselves these very basic questions. Do you believe that the demand for electricity is going to go up or down in the future?
Mm.
I think most people say it's going to go up. Okay. Do you think the cost of that electricity, do you think that's going up or down in the future? And, you look at how AI is going to disrupt electric rates and, you look at supply and demand. Wow, there's this huge demand because of AI for electricity. I don't know if the supply is going to keep up. So obviously that's going to create pricing issues where, most people will say, yeah, the cost is going to go up. Okay, great. Do you think your labor costs, do you think that those are going up or going down? Well, those are going up. So all these different factors of kind of what's going to start happening very rapidly, and certainly it's already starting to happen. This is going to be something that I think in 10 years people will look back and say, boy, I can't believe I didn't do this sooner. Or, I think in 10 years we're going to see this and it's going to be, thinking about trying to run a RV resort without a reservation software for all of those factors.
Yeah, yeah, that's a neat point, and thank you for sharing that. And we definitely want to leave time for people who maybe need to get their questions answered about even more specific things to their setup. So, Caleb, I'm going to invite you back in, and you've been monitoring the chat, and so help us out with those questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just want to let everybody know the chat should be set up to drop your questions there. Feel free to also drop them in the Q&A. I've got both pulled up on my other monitor here, and I'm ready for your questions here. But I think while those are coming in, I'm curious. Uh, so it sounds like, the from the, you know, employment side, that it maximizes the, employees that you have. From the, future proofing side, it sets you up to, be ready for these higher electricity demand things. Uh, what does this mean from a guest experience side?
Yeah, so and I think that is where we kind of run into a little bit of friction. I heard, I was talking with someone, and I was trying to kind of point him in the direction of, well, hey, you may really want to consider remote metering on some of the short-term stays, and they said, well, like I can't do that. If I do that, my guests are going to go down to the RV park down the road that doesn't charge for electricity. And there is that friction, but there's almost like a sort of like what you're sort of implying by saying that my guests are going to go down to the RV park down the road that doesn't charge for electricity is you're almost kind of admitting that you have some guests that are really kind of power hungry, power meaning as far as like electric, power hungry. And the fact that they actually don't prefer to be charged for what they use and they kind of want to take advantage of the freebie or the buffet of utility usage, I think was really kind of telling. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a big deal. I think guests, we aren't going in there and plugging the RV in to the utility pedestal for them. The guest is willingly doing that. And I think what's interesting, if you kind of did a thought process and you kind of understood your site and how guest stays at your site, I always, tell people, okay, what would happen to your occupancy if you took away that power pedestal, if you took away that utility pedestal? Do you think
Mhm.
guests would really want to stay, for as long as they do? The answer is, of course not. So what you part of your site is access to that utility, but it's not giving free utility usage. Um, and I think guests understand that. I mean, look, going back to the gas station analogy and kind of plugging in or getting gas, like they know that they're using a utility,
Mhm.
and they know that there is money, there's costs associated with that. Every one of these people, even if they're kind of the weekend warriors getting in their RV, taking their family, or if they live full time in their RV, they understand that utilities aren't free. Um, so I think kind of this, oh, I don't want to rub the guests the wrong way. Oh, I don't want to nickel and dime them. I don't know if the guests feel that way. It would be almost like, if you're a server at a restaurant, you're hesitant to drop the bill after the check. It's like, wait, no, like the guests are, like the guests order the food. They're willing to pay for it. Um, yeah, so I think that's just a quick mentality shift, and that if you do have guests that kind of complain about it, you kind of get insight into maybe that guest's usage and kind of what they want is they want that buffet of the utilities, which isn't fair to you as the operator.
Absolutely. Now, I know you mentioned the phased approach. So, how would you go about picking the first sites for that first phase to experiment on?
Yeah, so this is where we kind of operate in our little bubble, and I don't know, like this might be almost a cool question for camp life because what sort of data, like, and this is me actually just genuinely curious, like with a lot of the management software, can you kind of look at historical data and see which sites typically have like the largest rigs coming in, or can you run like reports on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it would boil down to a couple of different things. We have, obviously the site size is uploaded, and typically those correspond to like site types. Like usually our pull throughs are the largest. So I think probably where I would start is looking at the premium location, premium site pull throughs that are the largest,
Yeah.
and yeah, pulling data on those and then putting meters there. Um, and then trying to think through, I'm sure there's some reports that with because we have both the mass meter reading feature and the remote meter reading feature. So if you're not set up with meters yet, you can at least streamline a portion of the manual process. So there would be, data that could be pulled from that to identify those sites that are typically using the most power. So that would probably be the best kind of data source point. Yeah, Allison, what Allison came to marketing through onboarding, so I always love picking Allison's mind on, the conversations that happen as parks are getting set up too. So, do you have any thoughts on that too, Allison?
No, I just I think I guess just my humble opinion, those high traffic sites would be ones to start off on because I think that's where you're really going to see that
Yeah,
return.
Mhm.
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah.
And we do have one question hanging out there, Caleb. I didn't know if you could see that.
Yep, we've got a question from Gary here. Are you seeing a lot more electrical vehicle or electric vehicle usage? Any spikes in usage?
Yeah, it's funny. So part of this is anecdotally, and part of this is, we could actually see the data on our end. So yeah, I mean, we hear from park operators all the time. And now I'm seeing, because I do a lot of research and I scour websites, a lot of RV resorts are now saying no EV charging, specifically calling it out. So yes, it's obviously becoming enough of an issue where parks are now updating their websites or updating their sort of campground rules, if you will, to call out no EV charging. And while, this is where we kind of get in our bubble, and this is why our tool, it fits so well with a Camp Life management software, is because now you're getting all the data. So it's tough for us on the back end to see who like, we don't know who's in that site. Obviously, I could go into any park and I could see what their usage is. But the way EV charging works is, you get a really large spike in usage and it stays there. It's not like this gradual usage thing. It's like, boom, spike in usage, and it's just going to stay there. So we can see some of that on our end. I have fun, like if it's, like a Friday and it's kind of slowing down, and this is kind of off topic. But I'll go through kind of some of the marinas and RV resorts and I'll go through some of the sites, and I just see crazy numbers. And sure, some of those could be EV, but to the broader point is, I see data points and I see usage that is just unreal, and how consistent it is also. It's not like, okay, it's like one day they use a lot, the next day they didn't. Sure, there's some of that, but it's like, the rigs that are using 100 kilowatt hours a day.
Hmm.
And just to put that in perspective, like I would say on the low end, probably the average national rate is close to 15 cents a kilowatt hour. That's $15 a day. Um, and let's say your nightly site fee is $60. Well, nope. It went down to $45 just like that.
Hmm.
But yes, EV charging is becoming a large concern, both anecdotally and with the data that you could see using our system.
Very good. Yeah, thank you. We do have another question. Is it possible to charge more for um, e- is it possible to charge more for equipment purchase in the kilowatt hours than our cost, or does it depend per state? So it sounds like essentially kind of recouping the equipment cost through pricing there.
Yeah, so the short answer is no. If your city, your state, if you're at 15 cents a kilowatt hour, no, you can't charge more than what you're recouped. Now, there's a couple things with this. Is and well, so two things. So let's start off with the first thing. Like when you look at your utility bill, I'm sure you got like sales tax in there. In California, my goodness, you have like your base rate, and then you got like 10 other line items of, the forest burnt down last summer, so we're charging everyone this amount, or, just something
Right.
weird. So understanding what your true kilowatt hour charge is, and what that is basically just taking, let's say for round numbers sake, that your bill was $1,000. Oh boy, this is going to make me do math. This is going to be scary. But if your total bill was $1,000 and on your bill it said that the total park used 100 kilowatt hours, that means that your rate would be, or no, the kilowatt hours would have to be higher. So like 10,000 kilowatt hours and your total bill was 1,000. Um, Basically, what I'm trying to say, because I'm so bad at math, is that yes, add in some of those taxes and fees and do the math so you're getting your true kilowatt hour cost. Not just, like, okay, well, your city rate is 14 cents a kilowatt hour, but then they've got all these state taxes and fees and local taxes. Like you could actually do your true kilowatt hour cost by taking the total amount of the bill and divide it by the total kilowatt hours used. Secondly, and this is written, and this is where the sub-metering industry, like as a whole, if you think of sub-metering like large multifamily apartments, where they actually get it right a lot more, and this is something we see both on the marina and the RV side, is this hesitancy to charge an administrative fee. It's written into the sub-metering rules and regulations. And I promise you, if you live in a multifamily complex, especially like I do with me and my son, that yes, like I notice when I pay for utilities, there is always an extra charge for the utilities, and it's that admin fee. And you are allowed to charge a small administration fee to help you not only recoup the cost of the system, but to maintain the system. And if you kind of zoom out and look at this on a broader scale, like think of a state like California, which is where I live, where conservation is essential. And if we know submetering reduces the amount of overall usage, like no, like these states are happy for you to install a submetering system to take the burden off of their larger grid. And
Hmm.
that's why they write a lot of these, they write it directly into the laws that yes, you can charge an administrative fee to help with the upkeep and to help with the cost of the system, because overall it's good for everyone to reduce usage. So that's where the submetering industry kind of on a large scale gets it right. And I think, yeah, I think definitely both on the marina and the RV side, I do think operators should be charging some sort of admin fee for it.
Well, very good. Sounds like a lot of opportunities. And where would you recommend? And I'll make a last call for questions here as we're answering this last question. But um, where would you recommend looking for resources on what the regulations are for your state? Is there kind of a standardized place for each state to go look for that?
It is convoluted, so I do get it. But I've find myself using a lot of Chat GPT because I don't want to go digging through state laws, and I mean, you want to talk about, if you're tired and you want to take a good nap, go read about state rules and regulations. You'll get two paragraphs in, and you're out. But no, it's right there. Like, yeah, it may require a little bit of digging, but it is right there.
Well, very good. Jason, Allison, thank you both for your time today. And if people want to find out more about MarineSync, where can they go?
Yeah, feel free to check us out online at our website. We have all of our contact information there. We do a handful of trade shows each year. So if we have a booth, come say hi. And yeah, I mean, overall, even if you're just kind of curious, like we're happy to talk. Give us a call at the office. It might be me, it might be someone else. Hey, wherever you are in the journey, we are happy to meet you where you are and just kind of talk to you about how it works and how it could work for you and how it maybe could not. We know perfectly well this may not be a one size. This is not a one size fits all. And sure, there might be parks in which case I'll tell people, yeah, maybe it's not the best idea right now.
Mm.
Well, sounds good. Thank you. And I'm going
Thank
to
you
go
as
ahead
well.
and yeah, I'll drop a link in here in the chat to everyone as well. This one's a link to our remote meter reading page on Camp Life as well. That'll give you some information about how the feature works and what you'll see on the Camp Life end for your park, as well as some information about our remote meter reading partners there too. So, yeah, again, thank you both for joining us, and thank you to everybody who attended too. There will be a replay of this available, so watch for that coming in your emails later this week. So, yeah, have a great Tuesday, everybody, and yeah, all the best. So,
Allison, Caleb, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you,
thank
Jason.
you.
Yep, you got it. Take care.